Hello and welcome to Austin FC. This is my Football Manager 21 beta save. I'm Charlie, and over the next 2 weeks I'll be looking at the new offerings and features in FM21, starting today with the MLS Rules and Regulations. Before I begin, there is a very good article on Dictate the Game written by Luke Hume, all about the MLS with plenty of background information. I will link to it below this video. Today I'm going to concentrate on the wealth of information already available to you in the game when you fire it up. Yesterday we had our first look at the FM21 Beta, gave my reasons for taking over at Austin FC, and now we move on to the contract and player registration. So there are 4 areas in the game that are really going to help you understand what happens in the MLS. As I sort of touched on yesterday, it is a really complicated league to get yourself in. If you are a novice Football Manager player, I probably wouldn't recommend it. I'd sort of say to build up to it. The likes of the A-League in Australia, the MLS, they are full of these little regulations that sort of trip you up as you go through, whereas in England and in Europe indeed, it's a little bit more fluid. The only thing you have to really worry about is work permits. Over here, things are a little bit different stateside. So as I say, 4 areas that are going to help you, and we begin with the contracts and the player registration information. Helpfully, when you fire up the game and take over an MLS club for the first time, Football Manager will send you this article, and it is quite an important one. It helps you understand exactly what's going on with your squad, what the eligibility is, and how the salary cap is going to affect you. It's a big thing. You don't over here in the US just bring in players on massive contracts like you probably would at some of the top clubs in Europe. Every penny has to be counted, and every penny applies to your salary cap one way or another. Let's start at the top here. Austin are allowed to sign 2 designated players. It's actually 3 for each team, but Austin have already signed one. We looked at the squad yesterday where they already had 2 players that have been sent out to Paraguay on loan. So the likes of past designated players for English fans, the likes of Frank Lampard, Steven Gerrard, and it all started, of course, with David Beckham. Each team has a salary cap. I believe it's around 78,000. Designated players only count as a portion towards that. So their salary is down as £9,750 per week, not the full amount. And if a player is signed, as it says there, during the summer transfer window, you get a 50% discount on the overall impact. This is what I mean about wage budget. You have to really concentrate when signing players to know exactly what they're going to cost you in the long term. If a designated player is 20 years old or younger, he starts as a young designated player. So, for example, that will apply to Atlanta United with Ezekiel Barco. He will be, or have been, a young designated player, and as such his salary only counted $2,200 per week against the overall budget. If he's a little bit older, probably as he is now actually, it counts as $3,000. Each club has general allocation money and targeted allocation money, which they can use either to buy down salaries, so to reduce the amount of outlay, or to trade with other clubs in the MLS. There is also the option to purchase players from abroad. So one of the things we talked about yesterday was Atlanta United. Atlanta have a massive transfer budget. They've got 14 million, which is big for the MLS. They could pretty much go out and get a pretty decent European player in for that, because they've sold Miguel Almiron and Pity Martinez in recent times. So the money is there. I think they've got over $1 million in wage budget remaining as well. Obviously, of that, per week that is, of that only 10 grand, just under, will count against their salary cap. There are two main types of squad registration slots in the MLS, senior and off budget. If you are an off budget, you are given an exemption where players registered as a senior will always count towards the salary cap. Players on designated and senior contracts may only be registered using the senior slot. And as I said, players on senior contract can have their impact brought down by using your general allocation money. And I will show you how to do that a little bit later. There are senior minimum salary contracts. To be honest, I've not seen a lot of them used, I have to say. I haven't used many of them managing MLS with Minnesota or indeed Inter Miami. There is a big push in the MLS on club academies. Now, this has been something that's been highlighted over the last few years. I remember Taylor Twellman talking a lot about the DC United Academy being absolutely shocking as far as bringing players through. It's a big focus, and if you've got a decent youngster, I would suggest get him in. Get him in that first team squad, get him on the subs bench, and use him, especially if he's a little bit versatile. Generation Adidas contracts are becoming a little bit more rare, but they are offered to the highest rated prospects coming through the draft. The draft is something that I will go through later on as well, because there is a lot going on. There are reserve term contracts. You don't see those so many anymore, especially for new teams. You tend to sign your first team squad, get through the first season, and then look to press on and bring in different youngsters, different reserve players that can really help you. This article is very crucial for you. Read it, take the time, try to understand it. It is a difficult one over here in MLS. Squad Selection Rules is the other article that's really going to help you, because it'll tell you a bit more about what you're allowed and the numbers involved. So a squad must have no more than 30 players. Generally for a squad I look to have around 20, 21 players. I don't see the need to have more than that, especially if you've got a few that can play a couple of different positions. So if you've got somebody that can cover central defence and left back, for instance, or left back and right back, they can do a job on both wings. You don't need to go overboard with too many. As I say, the total salary of the squad must be less than $78,000. Of course, that does include those designated player contracts at $9,750. The squad must have no more than 8 internationals. I think that's a really difficult one, because if you want to build something, it's hard to then stop players going off and playing for their national team. You can't have more than 3 designated players. As I say, Austin already have 1. And there cannot be more than 2 non-young designated players in the squad. So those are the ones above 23, I think was the limit for that one. 10 off-budget players and 4 off-budgets that are not on a reserve contract and don't have homegrown status. The squad must have no more than 6 players with reserve contracts and no more than 4 non-homegrown with reserve contracts. The little bit down here in the purple box is to help you understand exactly where you fit in with the squad rules. So currently we don't have any players on the books. The 2 that we have are out on loan, so we're only paying £220 per week for them. We have no internationals in the squad but 2, including those loan players. 1 designated player is at the club, 1 non-young designated player. No off-budgets, no reserves, non-reserve, non-homegrown, no reserves, and no non-homegrown reserve players. That's really interesting. It helps you just understand what you've got when you first take over at a new club. So if you take over at, for example, LA Galaxy, there's a vacancy there at the minute. I am interested to know who is managing DC United in Football Manager. In fact, can I go and have a quick look at DC United? Will you let me see them? Oh, I bet you spell it differently here, don't you? They put the dot, I think, in there somewhere. Yeah, they do. I'm trying to see who's managing them at the minute, because in real life, I'm fairly sure that they're interviewing for a new manager. So, it's Chad Ashton who I believe was the caretaker coach. Yeah, interim manager. Right, interesting that. Not sure he will last there in that position. Sorry, regular viewers will be aware that sometimes I have a thought and then just go off and find out what's going on. So those are the two immediate articles that you're sent in your inbox that are really going to help you understand where you are at your club. A little bit about the drafts. So drafts, if I can click on the schedule, I tend to be like a grandma trying to send an email when it comes to things like this. Too many clicks, even though I'm trying to keep it as quiet as possible. So as you can see, on the 15th of December, that is tomorrow, interesting, in game time, that is the expansion draft. So this is for new clubs. That is ourselves, Austin FC. Next year, Charlotte will go through the same procedure where clubs in the MLS can protect 12 players. That's it. The rest of them are fair game. When I was with Inter Miami and went through the same procedure, Jesse Zardes was available. I couldn't say no. I had to bring him in. He's such a good player. The great man himself. The expansion draft allows you to bring in 5 players from other clubs. I will go through that in one episode. I do have a little bit of an approach that I would suggest, but we'll see how it comes off. Then into January, we've got the Super Draft there on the 7th. That is where the youngsters, the college students, the American system is a little bit different, brings through, and clubs are able to select them to join. Now, I know a little bit about this because I did an interview a few years ago with Oliver Shannon, who had come through the ranks. He went to Atlanta United at the time. He told me that it's basically it's an event. It's a long thing, and you kind of know already where you're going to go because you've been in touch with different clubs. Basically, a representative from one of the MS teams will go at the front, call out somebody's name, and select them as their first pick, their second pick, whichever it is, and they will sign them up. Now, players are not offered an automatic contract. They're basically only offered an opportunity to go to the club, participate in training, practice games, and impress. And if you do that, you will get signed on. Oliver did actually spent a year or two, I believe, with Atlanta before he's since moved on. So it's really interesting. And if you go onto YouTube, you can watch the drafts take place. It's really interesting just to see it because it is basically, I suppose it's like a college registration day or a university registration where they're sort of all sat in the room and then little players get selected. Little players compared to senior professionals go up there, they do the whole scarf picture, shake their hands with the people that have selected them. It's a really interesting dynamic, and if you get the chance, do have a quick look at it. The other one that will happen is the re-entry draft, which I don't see listed anywhere. So the re-entry draft is basically players that have been let go that you are able to pick up. You can kind of do that anyway through the scouting network. But the re-entry draft is for one. It's usually for players that have kind of dropped out of favour but could still do a job. So it's one to just look out for whenever that happens, and I'm honestly not sure when that is. Before we move on, I will just show you some of the contracts that you can offer players, because I think that's probably an important aspect. We've gone through exactly how much you can spend and how the player registration works. So if I find a player, let's have a look at, I don't have any that are scouted, I believe. So let's have a look at somebody who is interested in a transfer. Let's go somebody who is very interested in us. Let's use our network, and I'm looking for a player who is out of contract. Contract status is expired. Here we go. And I'd actually like, while we're here, an American player, because those are a little bit easier to deal with. So nationality is American. Here we go. And do you know what? I always like an international. I can't say no to an international player. Let's see if there are any. There are none. Fantastic. Let's have a look at youth. Let's pick on Jesse Gonzalez is wanted by a few clubs. Let's have a quick look at him. So he's a goalkeeper. Doesn't look brilliant, but let's have a quick look. We're going to approach to sign him, and these are the different contracts that we can offer him. We start as usual with the playing time. Thank you for that. Yes. Sorry, we're going through the tutorial here. I don't think we need it at this stage, do we? I mean, it's a contract we're offering. So I'm going to offer him a cup goalkeeper role. See if he's interested. Let's suggest a promise. He's happy at this stage. There we go. Let's move on to negotiate the contract. And again, we are in the tutorial. I'm fairly sure you can turn these off. Let's go. Thank you. If you are new to Football Manager, do by all measures go through them properly. I just want to show you the different types of contract. So for him, I can offer him a senior minimum salary contract or a senior contract. I was hoping that there was more there that I could offer him, but okay, let's not quibble. There's plenty of options there as well. MLS guaranteed contract clause. Okay, I'm actually going to walk away. I'm not really that interested in him as it is. So, disappointing because I was expecting more on there. But there you go. This just shows you. Not rehearsed. Off the cuff. Can you believe? In terms of transfers and trades, MLS don't really do transfer fees between clubs. They do in a sense that it's often the movement of general allocation money, targeted allocation money that they have, along with different assets. So things like player rights and their picks in the draft are often used. Players generally sign short-term contracts, by that I mean a season, so there's plenty of movement available to you, and of course that enters them into the drafts when they're out of contract. A good place to have a quick look at is in the finances screen. In League Specific, this just helps you understand exactly what your club has at its disposal. So as you can see here, we've got the salary cap of 78,000 up on the left, team salary cap spend at that £220 a week. Over on the right, we've got the transfer funds. So we've got 3.9 million, not a small amount. General allocation money available is 1.1 million. Targeted allocation money, we've got 2.1 million. And we've got the player slots down there. 2 designated player slots are available. Use those wisely. In terms of competitions here in MLS, there are actually 4 to look out for. We've got the Western Conference and the Eastern Conference. They make up the Supporters' Shield. So each club is divided up by their location. So as you can see, Austin are in the Western Conference with the likes of FC Dallas, LAFC, Minnesota, Nashville, and Seattle Sounders, a very successful club in MLS. Over in the East, we've got the likes of Atlanta United, Inter Miami, Columbus Crew are there, big fans of those, Orlando City with Nani, and then Toronto FC, also perennial winners of the Supporters' Shield and indeed MLS Cup in their history. So all the games that you play add up into the conferences, and that gives you the Supporters' Shield. So all teams are joined together in one big league, and that's where you find out just how you place. There is a trophy available for winning the Supporters' Shield. This season that went to Philadelphia Union, just completed. There was a bit of a hoo-ha, I have to say, because they weren't going to award it at one stage. That was when I think Toronto were on top, and they weren't happy. I don't think any club was really happy, having put in the work, having sacrificed, gone through the MLS's back tournament, and then put the games on at risk to their health. Let's all be honest about that sort of thing. To then not award a supporter shield seemed a bit churlish, and I'm glad that that's been reversed, and Philadelphia Union can celebrate their first piece of silverware. I think that's really important, and really disappointing to find out that they didn't want to award it. Don't quite understand that myself. Other competitions are the MLS Cup. Now, what happens is, in the conferences, the top, I want to say 10 sides, if I'm honest, but it's not. It's the top 7 from each progress through to the MLS Cup. And if I can just click on rules, it'll tell me how that works, hopefully. This is one area that I think I've looked at before. So you've got the group stage, which is the conferences, Supporters Shield, and then we go into the WC first round. That doesn't stand for World Cup or indeed Toilet. That stands for Western Conference. So the 2 teams that make it through to their respective finals here in the West and the East compete for the MLS Cup. And there we go. There are, of course, berths available to win in the Champions League over in the Americas. One of the ways to do that is to win the MLS Cup. The other ways are to qualify top of your conference. Other competitions, we've got the US Cup. As you can see there, Austin are to enter in the second round. This is your basic knockout tournament. Let's look at the past winners there. As you can see, no competition in 2020. We discussed that yesterday. Atlanta, Houston, Sporting Canvas, FC Dallas, Seattle with 3 wins between 2009 and 2011. Well done to them. Are they the record holders? I should say. Can I see that? No, the most times are the Greek American Atlas Astoria. I can honestly say I've never heard of them. Okay. Every day is a school day. In addition, we have the Canadian Championship. Now, Canadian teams such as Toronto, Vancouver Whitecaps, Montreal Impact, with Thierry Henry, are not able to win a place in the Champions League in the Supporters Shield. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and see if I can have a look at, here we go, Toronto FC, Vancouver Whitecaps. So there we have it. Vancouver were Canadian champions. That gets them into the North American Champions League. In fact, can I see past winners? We can. Dominated, you'd have to say, by Toronto FC, but they haven't won it since 2018, when they had a 3-year winning run, taken over by Montreal Impact and then by Vancouver. So, a bit of a share round there. What you'll find, of course, is that Canadian clubs who operate in the Canadian Premier League are also invited to feature in that one too. And that takes us through to the end of our MLS introduction. Hopefully there was some useful stuff in there. I'm a bit annoyed about the contract situation, but I'm sure we'll get to that in the future as we try and sign a few designated players. Tomorrow in the game, I'm going to go through the expansion draft, which means that I think we'll put that on YouTube as well. So we'll have an episode on Saturday. So get your notifications, subscribe, like, do all that cool business. Comment if you feel the need. Always like to hear what people are thinking about Football Manager 21. And again, if you spot an issue on the beta, do indeed get in touch with the SI forums. So just today I registered that there was an issue with the filter job security. If I knock off Canadian Premier League, the MLS jobs go as well. But if I knock off MLS, then they do disappear. So don't know what's going on there. As you can see, bottom left, you can report bug, and that takes you straight through to the SI forums. Hope you're enjoying your beta save. There was such a clamour for Football Manager. I suppose with everybody being a difficult time and everybody being at home more, then it was always going to be the way, wasn't it? Thank you for joining me. Do join me on tomorrow's edition for the expansion draft, where we can have a look at some of the players that are available, and I will just reveal, just before that, before we click through, some of my strategies when it comes to the drafts. We'll take a break on Sunday, the Lord's Day, and then come back on Monday with another episode, possibly looking at tactics, something like that. I mean, that would be quite enjoyable, and we can have a look at some of the new graphics that are featured in that menu. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you again tomorrow.